Optimization, optimization, optimization. PC gamers are mad. Hogwarts, Last of Us, the upcoming game Immortals of Avium, Jedi Survivors, which I can actually show you gameplay of, even though it can all be kind of a meme, like feel entitled to this stuff, but it honestly is a serious problem, so we gotta talk about it today, because these PC ports are feeling downright rude. First question you're probably asking is, how are these games PC ports? Because they come out at the same time on console. I can almost guarantee on the back end that we're probably not seeing that these are ports. Let me show you why. Current consoles that we're looking at is basically the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series. The PS5 has sold almost 40 million copies already, and Xbox Series is somewhere close to 20 million right now. That is quite a few consoles. And it doesn't take a genius to know that a lot of people are playing games on those consoles as well. The game developers are making games for consoles first, and then it's getting ported to PC. And you can't really blame them for this. A great example of this is Spider-Man's Marvel Remastered. Now, this was a Sony game that was exclusive to PlayStation 4, and then it later came to PlayStation 5 in November of 2022, about the first month of its launch. Steam Spy reported that it probably has at least sold 1 million copies on PC. So that is quite a bit of copies sold. It's nothing to scoff at. It was a really good port and did really well. It was at the time, which I don't know if it's done better since then, but it was the top selling Sony port to PC of all time. I'm pretty sure even topping out God of War. Let's check out how it has sold on PlayStation 4. According to Wikipedia, 3.3 million copies in the first 3 days of release. So it sold 1 million copies on PC in a month, and it sold triple that within the first 3 days on PS4. The Spider-Man was a clear PC port, and you can clearly tell that it didn't sell as well on PC. It's still respectable sales, which we'll talk about later. That could be for various reasons, like maybe the console audience is just more casual, so that they're more likely to buy a game like Spider-Man, instead of like PC gamers could be seen as more of a competitive crowd, where we're more into the hardcore games, not the single player games. Whatever angle you take at it, it doesn't change the fact that sales are sales. Now it was a PS4 game. Now we're on to PS5 and Xbox Series. And the hardware on these consoles are really, really impressive. They fundamentally have advantages over PC.
But see, here's the thing. The consoles know that they have a certain speed SSD, a certain amount of RAM, so they can stream it in and out as needed. Yeah. And that's not always true on PC.
So is this the game developer's fault? Do you think that they're happy putting out a bad PC port like Last of Us or Hogwarts or Jedi Survivors? Jedi Survivors in particular, I'm going to use it as an example here. And it's clear that it is poorly optimized, because typically games, especially single player games that are more visually intensive, are not as CPU demanding as this one is. So for example here, with my RTX 3080 and a Ryzen 5900X, not a slow CPU by any means, but not the fastest that's out there, but you shouldn't have to use the fastest hardware to play these games. Even at 1440p, not 1080p where it would be more CPU limited, but 1440p, no scaling options, giving as much of the brunt force to the GPU, and it was still CPU limited for this game. And that was before even turning on ray tracing. And as you know, ray tracing is a hog for CPU resources. That isn't the only thing that makes the PC port for Jedi Survivors bad. Basic things like you usually have on PC games is being able to adjust graphics settings. And the UI for adjusting these graphics settings is really bad. So let's turn off film grain. Wait. Does that actually turn off film grain? You have to scroll through with your arrow keys or your WASD and make sure you press enter or it won't confirm it. It's also pretty bad when you get into a PC game and then they instantly tell you that it is best experienced on a controller. And showing that this game maybe isn't that well optimized, the minimum specification requirement for PC is a GTX 1070 8GB graphics card. Yeah, it's 6.5 years old, but the GTX 1070 is surprisingly really capable today in a lot of games. I feel like a lot of people in the comments are going to be like, yeah, taking the Pascal generation to the grave. And I have to agree with you. What a great generation of graphics cards. Now on the AMD side, it is the RX 580 8GB graphics card. Again, a pretty fast card, but actually slower than the 1070. So weird that they would do that, but I think they were looking for the VRAM capacity in this sense. Yeah, a 6.5-year-old graphics card is more than likely to be the minimum spec nowadays. But it's weird that when I opened the game and then I tried my GTX 1070 on, I can actually test that card, I was able to run the game at 1440p native. And I'm specifically air quoting native, because this game has another problem for PC gamers, and that is enabling things, not telling you in the settings that it enabled them. I wouldn't expect that the 1070 could run this game at 1440p even at low settings and still be achieving 60 FPS. Like, that didn't feel right to me. But when you set the settings to low, it turns on FSR, so that is a resolution scaler by AMD, ultra performance by default. The game looked like a slurry mess, and when you went to the settings, it said that it was disabled. So you had to turn FSR on and then turn it back off again just to see the game how it's supposed to be seen. That is one thing on PC that we hate. Joy of being on PC is having control over the games, and you don't have control. A little bug that could probably be fixed, but not a good sign that it was made very well for PC. The last thing that I have to complain about the Jedi Survivor's PC port, and that is some bugs that I experienced. And I can't 100% confirm if this is because of the actual game itself or different things that were going on my computer at the time. So let me give you some context. OBS, I'd be recording, OBS would just freeze up, and the recording would basically die. OBS keeps breaking on me over and over again. But here we are. Now, luckily, I was using a certain file that I can recover the footage, so it wasn't a big deal. Don't know if this was because of the game, but I haven't experienced anything like this until I played this game. With all that said, it's obvious that the Jedi Survivor's port is pretty bad, and this is just one of the many bad ports that have released recently. If you were in my position and you're looking at this game, you probably couldn't deny that the game still looked pretty beautiful, all things considered. And that's why you have to remember the publisher of Jedi Survivors is EA. And EA likes money, which makes it really funny because EA also publishes the other game that I mentioned earlier called Immortals of Avium, also looking to be one of the worst PC optimized ports to date. As you can see, they posted the specs for this. I think it's coming out in May or June. The minimum specs is a 2080 Super. That is a really fast graphics card, guys. Not what you'd think would be the minimum specs. They did not hold back for this because EA is EA. EA likes money, as I just said. And matter of fact, they probably love money. I don't think EA would really care if you had to sell your firstborn child to play one of their games or to feed the gambling addiction in FIFA. So with these games, they want to spend as little time and money as possible developing them. And that makes the developers over at, say, Respawn, which made Jedi Survivors, have to make a choice. Do they choose, with the limited time that they have for the PC port, do they spend that time optimizing the game, or do they spend the time making the gameplay enjoyable? Because really, who knows how many game-breaking bugs on PC that Respawn fixed before launch to make this PC port good, or at least playable. On the playability standpoint, I at least was surprised Jedi Survivor could even run on the GTX 1070 at 1440p. It impressed me. I was like, wait, you can still use this GPU nowadays on a AAA title that has been touted as really poorly optimized? Yeah, you can. Now, on a side note, like, it's disappointing that you can't fully utilize a graphics card like an RTX 3080. I'm sitting here at 20% CPU utilization. But admittedly, on a gameplay standpoint, I have to give Respawn a lot of credit. In the limited time that I played it, I had fun. How do you have fun if you can't play the game? The gameplay was good, okay? And I do respect the studio for spending the time that they had making good gameplay. In fact, this game was $70. Now I was in a position where I was like, oh, I want to test it for the channel. I would love to be able to return it within that 2-hour window of me testing it. And I pushed my limit all the way up to 110 minutes. And I hope Steam doesn't see this video because they might not let me return it, but I did return the game because I can't justify spending $70 on a bunch of AAA games just to test them. That is all to remember, guys, that gameplay is king. When you think about it, Hogwarts Legacy has sold really well and it has had a pretty sizable Steam player base despite having poor optimization, because people have always wanted to be a wizard at Hogwarts and there's never really been a game like that. But with all this said, it is still really disappointing to see PC be put on the back burner compared to consoles this generation. I mean, at least so far. We don't know how the future is going to be. It's also more depressing to see that this generation of PC components has the community really upset about its value and losing trust in the companies that produce these products. And a lot of people are almost giving up on this hobby because this generation not interesting, or they're just opting for the better value in consoles, or they're just not even touching the new hardware, which would allow them to run these new games that are coming out. But despite those wavering statements that I just shared with you, Steam still has 132 million monthly users. Yes, this was in 2021. It is probably higher now, or it is at least stagnated because that was during COVID. So there's obviously a lot of people that play PC. It is obviously a huge market, and it has to be taken into account, like the clear PC ports, like Spider-Man came out back in 2018 and then re-released on PC as a remastered version. It may have sold less on PC, 1 million copies in a month compared to 3 million copies in 3 days on PS4, but 1 million copies isn't anything to disregard. It's clear people will buy the games. Now, it is to mention that Spider-Man was a good PC port, along with God of War, also a good PC port. Really impressive, actually. And then to see the bad PC port from Sony that was Last of Us was pretty disappointing, but the other games were really good. You make a good PC port and it sells pretty well. Who would have thought? Yeah, I know a lot of you guys are thinking of it, so I have to pop in here. Jedi Survivors has an update. So a lot of you guys are probably thinking, well, it's fine now, you don't really have a right to talk about it. The game's a work in progress. They have fixed some of the CPU optimization problems, and Steve from Hardware Unboxed did a great recap on this, but this kind of goes to prove my point. Like this comment here, it really just sums up this whole situation. They fixed a CPU bottleneck so fast, it seems like the game needed about a month more to be at a playable state on launch. It needed a little bit more time in the oven, and that's where we really have to talk about how much time and resources developers are able to spend on these games. They could have delayed the launch of this to make it better. I doubt that they saw this performance when they're developing and thought it was okay. So I just wanted to note some more time should probably be devoted to the PC ports. Jedi Survivors is getting to a playable state and they're still working on it. See where it ends up, I guess. Hopefully they don't give up. I know there was a lot of people talking about Resident Evil 4 and like, oh, if you have under 8 gigabytes of VRAM, you turn on ray tracing, the game crashes. But overall, like Resident Evil 4 ran really well on PC. There was really nothing to complain about other than the VRAM problem, and for that you just turn off ray tracing. It's really not that big of a deal. The game doesn't even have impressive of ray tracing to begin with. That was a good PC port as well. Game was pretty cool too. Hopefully this sparked some inspiration, you guys, some thoughts. I don't know, I chose to make the lights red in the background today. Like, I feel like a super villain or something. See you guys in the comments. See you in the next video. I hope you have a good one. Peace.